This is SOSF. Okay, buckle up, because what we're about to talk about is gonna piss some people off. And you know what? Good. Let's get into it. So, we gotta talk about this guy, Sam Altman. If you've been living under a rock, he's the CEO of OpenAI, the company that basically unleashed ChatGPT on the world and sent every person with a keyboard into a simultaneous state of euphoria and panic. One minute we're laughing at AI-generated pictures of the Pope in a puffy jacket, the next we're wondering if we're all going to be replaced by a chatbot that's smarter than us. And this guy, Sam Altman, is right at the epicenter of the whole goddamn earthquake. But this isn't just about some tech CEO. That's boring. What's fascinating, what's truly wild about this dude, is that he's a walking paradox. He's like two different people crammed into one body. On one hand, you have his employees, the super geniuses actually building this stuff, and they look at him like he's a combination of Steve Jobs, Gandhi, and their favorite uncle. They are ride or die for this guy. We're talking, they would literally burn down their own billion-dollar company just to follow him into the wilderness. It's like a cult, but with stock options. But then, on the other hand, you have the people who were supposed to be his bosses, the board of directors, the adults in the room, right? And they look at him and see something completely different. They see a liar, a manipulator, a guy so deceptive and untrustworthy that they staged a boardroom coup and fired him in the most brutal, public way imaginable. So how can both be true? How can one guy be a messianic leader to his followers and a Machiavellian schemer to his overseers? That's the mystery. And it all exploded in this crazy 5-day corporate drama back in November 2023 that was more intense than an episode of Game of Thrones. It was a battle for the soul of the most important company on the planet, and it tells you everything you need to know about where we're heading with this whole AI thing. It's a story about power, loyalty, and whether the guy building our technological future can actually be trusted. So, let's get into it. To really understand this dude, you have to go back to the beginning. He's not some corporate suit who climbed the ladder. He's a product of that classic Silicon Valley mythology. He's a Stanford dropout, 19 years old, studying computer science, and he just decides, nah, I'm out. I got better things to do. Which, let's be honest, is either a sign of incredible arrogance or incredible genius, and with him, it's probably a bit of both. So in 2005, he starts his first company, a thing called Looped. And the idea was actually pretty brilliant for its time. It was a location sharing app. Think about the Find My Friends feature on your iPhone, where you can see where your buddies are on a map. Looped was that, but way before the iPhone was even a thing, really. He was ahead of the curve. He goes out, he's this kid CEO, and he raises over $30 million in venture capital. He's got the drive. He's got the persistence. He said a great quote later, something like, "The way to get things done is to just be really fucking persistent." And that's him in a nutshell. He's a shark. He never stops swimming. But here's where the first crack in the golden boy image appears. Looped, for all its cleverness, never really took off. It was a commercial flop, and they sold it for a pretty modest amount in 2012. But the interesting part wasn't the business outcome. It was the internal drama. Years later, when all the OpenAI stuff was blowing up, stories started leaking out that the management team at Looped, the guys in the trenches with him every day, went to their board of directors not once, but twice, and asked them to fire Sam Altman. Their reason? They described his behavior as deceptive and chaotic. Think about that for a second. Right from the very start of his career, you have this pattern emerging. The guy is building something new, he's pushing the envelope, but the people working closest with him are waving these huge red flags, saying, "This dude is out of control. We can't trust him." It's the first hint of the two Sams, the visionary on the outside, and the chaotic operator on the inside. After Looped, he lands at a place called Y Combinator. Now, if you're not in the tech world, you need to understand what Y Combinator, or YC is. It's not just some company. It's the kingmaker. It's like the Harvard of tech startups, but harder to get into. It's the accelerator that launched companies like Airbnb, Reddit, and Stripe. Getting into YC is like getting a golden ticket. And the guy who ran it, Paul Graham, is a living legend in the valley. He's like the Yoda of startups. So Sam joins YC, and he rises up fast. In 2014, Paul Graham himself handpicks Sam to be his successor, the new president of Y Combinator. And Graham becomes Altman's biggest champion. He writes these essays about him, and he's not just praising him, he's anointing him. He puts him in the same sentence as Steve Jobs. There's this famous quote where Graham says, "On questions of design, I ask what would Steve do? But on questions of strategy or ambition, I ask what would Sam do?" That is an insane level of praise. He's basically saying this kid is the next generational genius. He talked about Sam having this piratical gleam in his eye, this ability to beat the system. He loved that about him. This endorsement from Paul Graham basically cemented Altman's public image as a strategic mastermind. He was the chosen one. But then, the pattern shows up again. In 2019, he leaves his post as president of YC. The public story was that he was just stepping back to focus more on this little side project he had going called OpenAI. It was all very friendly, very amicable. But later, the truth started to trickle out. Paul Graham himself admitted that Altman was asked to choose between YC and OpenAI. And one of the former OpenAI board members who would later vote to fire him, Helen Toner, was even more blunt. She just came out and said it. Sam was fired from his previous job at Y Combinator. So, you see it again, right? He climbs to the very top. He's hailed as a visionary. And then, behind closed doors, he's shown the exit. The mentor, Paul Graham, saw ambition and force of will, the hallmarks of a great founder. But it seems the people trying to actually run the organization day-to-day experience that same force of will as chaos and deception. It's the exact same conflict that would later tear OpenAI apart, just on a much, much bigger stage. So after YC, Altman goes all in on OpenAI. And you have to understand the original mission of this place, because it's key to the whole story. It wasn't founded to build a cool chatbot to write your emails. It was launched in 2015 as a non-profit research lab. A non-profit. The whole idea, the grand, noble quest, was to make sure that when we finally build a true artificial general intelligence, an AGI, a machine that is smarter than all humans combined, it doesn't end up like Skynet and kill us all. The mission, literally written in their charter, was to ensure that AGI benefits all of humanity, not just to make some shareholders rich. It was supposed to be a check on the corporate greed of places like Google. Altman was the public face of this, the thoughtful steward, talking about responsibility and the existential risks of AI. It's a beautiful vision. The only problem? It's a vision that costs an ungodly amount of money. Building AGI isn't like coding an app in your garage. It requires more computing power than almost anything in human history. It's like trying to build the Death Star. You can't fund that with bake sales and charitable donations. You need Death Star money. Altman knew that if they wanted to compete with the tech giants, they needed billions, more capital than any non-profit had ever raised. So, in 2019, he orchestrates this radical transformation. He creates a for-profit company inside the non-profit parent. It was a new, bizarre structure they called capped profit. It's a Frankenstein's monster of a business model. It allowed them to take massive investments, most notably a multi-billion-dollar partnership with Microsoft, and it let them offer equity to their employees so they could recruit the best talent from Google and Meta. It was an ingenious solution to their money problem. But it was also, you could argue, the original sin of OpenAI. It created an immediate, irreconcilable conflict of interest right at the heart of the organization. The structure was a ticking time bomb. Think about it. You have the non-profit board, whose legal, fiduciary duty is to humanity. Their job is to be cautious, to prioritize safety, to make sure the AI doesn't go rogue. They are the guardians of the original, sacred mission. But then you have this for-profit subsidiary, run by the same guy, Sam Altman, which is under intense pressure from its investors to grow, to ship products, to compete, and to generate massive returns. So you've got one part of the organization that's supposed to be hitting the brakes, and another part that's flooring the accelerator. They're in the same car, but they're fighting over the steering wheel. A crash wasn't just possible. It was inevitable. Every single accusation the board later made against Altman, that he wasn't candid, that he withheld information, can be seen as a symptom of this broken structure. He was serving the needs of the for-profit engine, which demanded speed and secrecy. The board was trying to govern according to the slow and cautious principles of the non-profit mission. The breakdown in trust was guaranteed. It was baked into the system from day one. And that brings us to the meltdown. The 5 days in November 2023 when that ticking time bomb finally went off. This is one of the most insane corporate stories ever, and it all played out in public, on Twitter, for everyone to see. It starts on a Friday afternoon, November 17th. Sam Altman gets a text from Ilya Sutskever. Now, Ilya is a critical character here. He's a co-founder and the chief scientist of OpenAI. He's not a business guy. He's a pure researcher, one of the most respected AI minds on the planet. He's the true believer in the safety mission. He's a genius who has grown increasingly worried that Sam is moving too fast, that he's putting growth ahead of safety. So Ilya texts Sam, "Hey, can you hop on a Google Meet real quick?" Sam logs on. And on the screen is the entire board of directors, minus his co-founder and ally, Greg Brockman. And they just dropped the bomb. Ilya tells him, "Sam, you're fired." Just like that. Through a video call. Imagine being the king of the tech world 1 minute, and the next you're being unceremoniously dumped by your own board. A few minutes later, they call Greg Brockman, tell him he's been kicked off the board, and he quits as president in protest. In the span of an hour, the two leaders of the most important AI company in the world are out. It was a decapitation. The board then releases this cryptic public statement. They say Altman was fired because he was not consistently candid in his communications with the board, hindering its ability to exercise its responsibilities. Now, that's some cold, corporate jargon. But what it really means is, we can't believe a word this guy says. He's been lying to us. It was a declaration of war. The board thought they had all the power. They had the legal authority. They were the directors. They could hire and fire the CEO. Simple, right? Wrong. They made a catastrophic miscalculation. They failed to understand where the real power at OpenAI lay. It wasn't with the board or its abstract mission. The power was with the talent. It was with the hundreds of brilliant researchers and engineers. And their loyalty wasn't to the board. It was to Sam Altman. This is where it goes from a boardroom drama to a full-blown rebellion. The employees go nuclear. Over the weekend, this open letter starts circulating. It's addressed to the board, and it basically says, reinstate Sam Altman and Greg Brockman and resign, or we all quit. Every single one of us. And they weren't bluffing. Within 48 hours, 738 out of 770 employees had signed it. That's over 95% of the company. It's a level of employee solidarity that is just unheard of. It's like the entire crew of an aircraft carrier telling the Pentagon, we're following our captain, not you, and we're taking this billion-dollar carrier with us. For the employees, the choice was simple. The board was offering them ideological purity, but at the risk of the whole company collapsing. Sam was offering them a chance to continue their world-changing work, and, not insignificantly, to make their stock options worth a fortune, something the board's actions had just put in jeopardy. While this is happening, Microsoft gets involved. Their CEO, Satya Nadella, had bet the future of his company on OpenAI, investing over $13 billion. He wasn't about to let some dysfunctional board burn his investment to the ground. So he plays it like a chess grandmaster. He immediately goes on TV and announces, Sam Altman and Greg Brockman are joining Microsoft to lead a new, advanced AI research lab. It was a brilliant, ruthless move. He was essentially telling the OpenAI board, you have two choices. You can bring Sam back and we continue our partnership. Or, I will poach your entire workforce, and you'll be left with nothing but an empty office building. He put a gun to their heads. The final, most surreal twist comes from Ilya Sutskever, the guy who started the whole coup. The safety hawk. The true believer who fired Sam out of principle. Faced with the reality that his actions were about to destroy the company he helped build and hand all its talent over to a fully commercial behemoth like Microsoft, he does a complete 180-degree turn. He signs the employee letter demanding the board resign and bring Sam back. He then goes on Twitter and posts, I deeply regret my participation in the board's actions. It was a stunning public surrender. He realized he'd won a moral victory but was about to lose the entire war. For him, a flawed OpenAI led by Altman was a better outcome for humanity than no OpenAI at all. After that, it was over. The board's position was untenable. By Tuesday, a deal was done. Sam Altman was reinstated as CEO of OpenAI. He walked back into the office he'd been fired from just 5 days earlier, not as a disgraced ex-employee, but as an absolute monarch. He had faced down his board and won. He now had a new board, one loyal to him, and more power than ever before. It was a complete and total victory. So, this whole insane episode brings us back to the central question, who the hell is Sam Altman? Is he the inspirational leader that 95% of his company would commit career suicide for? Or is he the deceptive manipulator that his own board was willing to destroy the company to get rid of? The crazy thing is, they might both be right. Let's look at the case for Sam the Saint, the architect of loyalty. To the people who work for him, the engineers and researchers, he's a transformational leader. He's not just a manager. He's a general leading a historic charge. He has this incredible ability to frame their work, which is basically just writing code and running models, as this grand, world-changing quest to benefit all of humanity. He makes them feel like they're not just building a product, they're shaping the future of the species. That's an intoxicating vision, and it inspires a level of devotion that is almost religious. People who support him describe him as a born empathetic leader. They say he understands his team, that he cares, and they point to the employee revolt as the ultimate proof. That's Exhibit A, B, and C. You don't get that kind of loyalty unless you've fostered a deep, personal connection with your people. They see him as the indispensable visionary, the only person on Earth who can navigate the insane technical, political, and financial challenges of building AGI. Without him, they believe, the mission fails. But then, you have to look at the other side of the coin. The case for Sam the schemer, the man with a pattern of deceit. This narrative is pushed most forcefully by the people who were supposed to be his equals or his superiors. The former board members. And they don't just have vague feelings, they have a list of specific, damning accusations. A former board member named Helen Toner has been the most vocal. After the dust settled, she went on a podcast and just laid it all out. She claimed Altman lied to the board on multiple occasions. She said he actively withheld critical information from them. For example, she alleges that the board found out about the launch of ChatGPT on Twitter. Think about that. The board of directors, the people legally responsible for the company, found out about the most important product launch in their history at the same time as the rest of the world. It's mind-boggling. Toner also claimed that Altman lied to them about his personal financial interests. She said he owned the OpenAI startup fund, which invests in other companies, but didn't disclose his ownership to the board, presenting himself as an independent member with no financial stake. This is a massive conflict of interest. She also said he gave them inaccurate information about the company's safety processes, making it impossible for them to do their job of oversight. And she even accused him of lying to other board members to try and get her kicked off the board because she had co-authored a research paper he didn't like. And the accusations get even darker. Toner revealed that 2 senior executives at OpenAI went to the board with documentation, including screenshots, reporting what they called psychological abuse from Altman. They described a toxic atmosphere and an environment of fear and intimidation. The scary part is that critics say this isn't just an OpenAI problem. It's a Sam Altman problem. They connect the dots backwards. They point to the reports from his first startup, Looped, where his team tried to get him fired for deceptive and chaotic behavior. They point to his contentious exit from Y Combinator. From this perspective, the November crisis wasn't a surprise. It was the inevitable culmination of a career-long pattern. A pattern where the people working for him see an inspiring leader, but the people trying to hold him accountable see a rogue agent who will say or do anything to achieve his objectives. And his objectives seem to go far, far beyond just running OpenAI. This guy isn't just a CEO. He's an empire builder. He operates on a scale that is hard to comprehend. He's one of the most prolific and successful private investors in Silicon Valley. His personal portfolio is estimated to be worth at least $2.8 billion. He was an early investor in monster companies like Stripe, Reddit, and Airbnb. He's got his fingers in over 400 companies. This alone creates a tangled web of potential conflicts of interest. Take Reddit. Altman was one of its largest shareholders. In 2024, OpenAI signs a major deal to license all of Reddit's data to train its AI models. The moment that deal is announced, Reddit's stock skyrockets, making Sam Altman personally a huge amount of money. Is that illegal? No. But does it look a little fishy? Absolutely. Or look at Helion Energy. It's a startup trying to crack the code of nuclear fusion, basically creating a miniature star on Earth for clean, limitless energy. It's a moonshot. Sam Altman is a major investor and was the chairman of the board. Now, who needs a truly insane, unprecedented amount of energy to power their massive data centers? Oh, right, OpenAI. His AI company could one day be the biggest customer for his energy company. He's not just playing the game, he's building the entire stadium. But if you want to see the Altman paradox in its purest, most distilled, and frankly, most terrifying form, you have to look at his other side project, WorldCoin. This thing is so audacious it sounds like it's straight out of a dystopian sci-fi novel. The project's goal is to create a global digital identity system, a proof of personhood by scanning the iris of every single human being on the planet. They have these futuristic-looking devices called orbs, which look like chrome bowling balls, and they're going around the world scanning people's eyeballs. In exchange for your unique, unchangeable biometric data, you get a digital ID and a little bit of their new cryptocurrency, called WLD. The grand humanitarian vision, as Altman frames it, is to build the infrastructure for a global universal basic income, a way to distribute wealth in a future where AI has taken all the jobs. It's a classic Altman play, a breathtakingly ambitious goal wrapped in a noble mission. But the execution has been a complete ethical dumpster fire. Privacy experts and government regulators are freaking out. They see it as a dystopian nightmare, a private corporation tricking people into handing over their biometric data. The project has been suspended or banned in countries all over the world, from Spain and France to Kenya and India. Investigations have found that WorldCoin's operators allegedly used deceptive marketing practices, targeted vulnerable people in developing nations, and collected data from minors. A black market even emerged where people were selling their iris scans for as little as $30. It's incredibly bleak. Even Sam Altman himself has admitted the project has a clear ick factor. WorldCoin is the perfect microcosm of the man himself, a vision so grand it could change the world for the better, pursued with methods that many find deeply unethical and alarming. It's the same pattern. The goal is so important that the rules and concerns of the present just don't seem to apply. So where does that leave us? This investigation doesn't give you a neat little answer. Sam Altman isn't a hero or a villain. He's a force of nature. His defining traits, his immense ambition, his persuasive power, his relentless drive, are the very source of both his incredible successes and his most severe criticisms. His reality distortion field inspires a level of loyalty and motivation in his team that is the envy of the corporate world. To them, he's the brilliant, transformational leader who can make the impossible happen. But that exact same quality is seen as a pattern of manipulation and deceit by those tasked with oversight. His focus on fast iteration is both his biggest competitive advantage and a potential disregard for safety. His talent for creating a loyal us simultaneously creates a distrustful them. His strengths are his weaknesses. They are two sides of the exact same coin. And here's the terrifying implication. The most powerful, potentially world-altering technology in human history is being steered by a leader whose entire operating model is polarizing and high-risk. The November crisis proved that our traditional systems of checks and balances, things like boards of directors, are completely useless against a leader who commands the absolute loyalty of the human talent, which is the company's real value. The board had legal power, but Altman had practical power. And it wasn't even a fair fight. The question for our future isn't really whether Sam Altman is a good guy or a bad guy. That's too simple. The real question is whether the systems we build around leaders like him are strong enough to manage the paradox he represents. Because he's just the first, there will be others who follow his playbook. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. For years, the big debate in AI has been about alignment. How do we make sure a future superintelligence is aligned with human values? But what if we've been asking the wrong question? What if the real alignment problem is right here, right now? It's not about the machines, it's about the men building them. If you had to create a digital god, an intelligence that would reshape our world, who would you trust with the keys to the kingdom? Would you pick the visionary who moves at the speed of light but seems to believe the rules don't apply to him? Or would you pick the cautious committee that follows every rule but might be too slow to win the race against less scrupulous rivals? And what does it say about all of us, if the person who ends up in control is simply the one who was most skilled at convincing everyone to just give him the keys and stop asking so many damn questions? See you next time.